Jimmy and Joanne, a lot of people are feeling like President Dumb Joe is
Trader
actually
Joe.
just continuing the Barack Obama administration. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing very
fine.
well. Yeah.
You're in a
Yeah.
winter
I think
wonderland
you're
again.
right, Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people I've heard it rumored, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, that Obama is actually whispering in the ear and doing it all. You know, it wouldn't surprise me.
I bet that's happening. I mean, he said at one point that that's what he would want. And
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine a more puppety puppet than President Super Dumb Joe?
Yeah, Trader Joe. Listen, you can't, there were a lot of people that ran for president on the Democrat ticket would have been better than him, a lot of them. And why they picked him when nobody supported him and he couldn't even speak, you know, he couldn't even do a speech.
Somebody said that Jim Carrey was in makeup, had a mask, and he was the guy actually acting like Biden, you know.
Well, joking aside, in the Middle East, it is very common, and in the United States as well. Lyndon Johnson used to do it. Hillary Clinton has been accused of doing it. But this use of doppelgangers and body doubles, we even saw Saudi Arabia was doing this when they assassinated Jamal Khashoggi. They had a guy dress up as him who looked like him go out the back door so they could generate some fake evidence and say, oh, no, he left. So this use of a body double, now that President Dumb Joe can go around with the mask on all the time, it just makes finding body doubles that much easier. Just need somebody with white hair.
Gaddafi had 12.
As one of our friends says, the false flags are always flying very high.
Right.
And, you know, the truth is we don't know what the hell is going on. There's so many pieces of disinformation coming out from all directions. And it's real hard to try to disseminate what the truth is and what the falsehoods are and who's telling the truth and who's being fed a pack of shit and everything. You know, I mean, it's terrible. And, of course, all of us sheeple out here trying to figure out if it's safe to go out the front door, if we need to stock away some more water or some beans or whatever, you know. And in the meantime, there's no leadership. And the truth of the matter is, this past election was turned into a deal about Trump, and it wasn't about Trump. It was about the United States, about America, and about the lives and souls of the people. And that was completely turned over to idolize a man that really the problem was our country was being disassembled and taken away from us. And here you point this finger at this guy, and you know, unfortunately, people in the United States have to have a leader. So, you know, we don't have a leader. We don't have a leader, and there's nobody speaking for us. And so everything we try to glean some truth from this place or another, and then there's so many alternate opinions about everything we hear.
Yeah,
So,
and then there's Castle Rock. Everybody's talking about that, you know.
I don't know about that. What is that?
Castle Rock is a studio owned by Amazon in Hollywood. They say this is where
that's where Biden's
White
House is.
Oh, well, I do know about Castle Rock Entertainment. That's Meathead's entertainment company. It's Rob Reiner. Yeah, Rob Reiner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's going on with Castle Rock?
They have pictures, Jason.
That's where the studio is.
They have pictures of all kinds of stuff. They have put up some big trees so they can't see on one side, but there's even a picture of someone with their hand behind a set, pulling the set back. There's different cars driving outside the window. That would never happen at the White House.
Trucks backed up there. You know, I mean, it's a studio set. So,
well, I haven't heard too much about that. But tonight, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to go back to Benghazi, because with President Stupid Joe in office, we're back to this Libya model and, you know, the Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama route of destroying the place. And I want to be clear before we begin, when we do our sponsor exclusive segment that people are going to be able to watch on patreon.com/James and Joanne Moriarty, or Patreon or subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth. A lot of people saw the show I did last week with Lee Stranahan. He was talking about Benghazi and his take on what the impetus for it was, etc. And people asked me, what do Jimmy and Joanne say about this? So I want to make sure that people know that this is not going to be sniping at Lee. This is not bashing Lee. This is not criticizing Lee, but you guys have a substantially different understanding of what the causes were, what the involvement of this video may or may not have been. And I think it's important that we talk about it because there are all these competing narratives, and just because somebody supports one, like Mike Lindell, for instance, a lot of people saw, I called him and I wanted to share some information I had about Mary Fanning. Now, just because Mike Lindell puts out information that I know is false, I don't immediately assume that he's lying. He might be tricked. He might be having the wrong idea. But when he acted the way that he did, then I become convinced that he's either stubborn and stupid or part of the problem, spreading the disinformation. So I want to make sure that everybody knows we're not trying to beat up on anybody. We're just trying to get to the bottom of all this.
Jason, I'm going to stand on the proof that we've been delivered. I'm not going to give any opinions, our opinions. That's not our position. But when you have the standing government of Libya that was trying to cover their ass immediately, let everybody know they didn't have anything to do with this, and they put it out an official report. And we delivered that report to Jerry Corsi within a day or so of it getting released. And it was read in the congressional record. And we were told to get that read into the record took an act of God. They didn't want that information in there. It was validated that the Libyan security forces in Libya, the government that the US, UN, and NATO installed in Libya in 2011, they're the ones that wrote that report. And they wanted to make sure that everybody knew they didn't have anything to do with that. Second, the tribes of Libya told us a couple of weeks before, there was a general in the desert that called us and said, your properties are going to be attacked. And we said, what properties are you talking about? Well, your U.S. properties, like your embassy in Libya and in Egypt. We were told a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks ahead of time. Mm-hmm. We also had the number 2 guy in security in Libya in 2011 asked us what in the hell we were doing delivering 20,000 rockets to Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood and Ansar al-Sharia in Libya. He asked us that. His name was Dr. Aguila. Nobody ever talks about that. We have proof from other sources that there were 50,000 rockets bought by Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden in maybe late 2009, early 2000. No, they were delivered in 2010. To the Secretary of State, 50,000 shoulder-mounted rockets. Chris Stevens was killed over that rockets. We have definitive proof of that.
It's too bad the guy's name
everybody will get it.
Wasn't. It's too bad the guy's name isn't Dr. Acula, because then you could call him Dracula.
Aguila actually in Spanish means snake, but that's his name. Perfect English. He was number 2 in security in Libya. And besides that,
no, it's with a G.
I'm joking. This is Dracula.
Oh, yeah. And besides that, at the time that attack was taking place, we were told that Ansar al-Sharia, who was paid by the U.S. government to protect that safe house, Ansar al-Sharia was normally guarding that place. They had reduced their guards down to 3. And all this will be in our PDF. Everybody on the paid site will be able to see it. But that proof that there was no security at that place at that time, Chris Stevens' entire itinerary had been passed out to everybody. All his security had been removed. He had asked for additional security. And besides that, Libya had no movie houses. And in early 2011, YouTube had been shut off in Libya because so much false information was coming in from the alternate media into Libya that they cut it. So there was no YouTube.
Let me slow you down a second, Jimmy, because I know you're very excited to share this with everyone, and we're going to be going into great detail in the sponsor exclusive segment. But I want to make sure that we're very clear always in our distinction between evidence and proof. It's a very treacherous, slope to go down to start referring to things as proof. I think we need a slew of definitions if we're going to talk about proof.
We were there.
But Jimmy, it's evidence. It's evidence. Please just don't use the word proof, because
we were there. We're eyewitnesses, Jason.
I'm not denying that you're an eyewitness. I'm just saying that it's very important to me that we stay away from the word proof. Proof is one thing if we're doing a scientific experiment. It's another thing if we're in a United States criminal court. It's a different thing if we're in a civil court. It's a whole other thing if we're in a British court. So I just hate the word proof because so often people use it and then it loses meaning. You guys have evidence. You're firsthand witnesses. You have evidence that perhaps many other people haven't seen. And we're going to go over that evidence in detail. We're going to leave it to the audience to decide what that evidence proves, disproves, or doesn't prove. But I think when we get into this conversation of, like Mike Lindell calls his thing, absolute proof. First of all, he's wrong. A lot of things in there are bad evidence. He's got some very good evidence and some very good witnesses. But when you start running around calling it proof, we got to leave it to some body of judgment to determine whether our evidence proves something. In this case tonight, that body will be the court of public opinion in the form of our audience. You guys will present evidence. The audience can compare it to other evidence they've seen, and they can decide if we've proven something or not. That's my only beef.
Well, I think very few people discern between proof and evidence, Jason. I think, when you get into that, you get into semantics and you lose a whole lot of people. But you're right. I mean, I agree with you. But I think when you have evidence that was handed to you from Libya, from the source, and when you have eyewitnesses who were across the street when it happened, when you have these kind of things, they're not just our
CNN or somebody
this
that's
is
putting
not
out
our
an agenda.
opinion. This is what we witnessed, what we didn't witness Benghazi, but what we witnessed in Libya, and the people we met in Libya and the Libyan tribes who have come to us with proof of, or not, well, you want to use the word proof, well, evidence that this is what happened. And then we did another whole show with you when they came to us from Washington, D.C. asking us to get proof or how they were going to defend this guy who was charged with the Benghazi thing. They asked us to find out.
So the bad guys in Washington, D.C. pointed to us and said those are the people that had the information.
That lawyer, right? I remember that.
Yeah.
Peed.
Yeah. That's him. And what happened was the guy was not even a Libyan. He was a Palestinian. And they obviously didn't know that, or they did know that. I don't know. But there were a whole lot of things that happened, during that time. So I think you have to look at what the DIA said about our information. The DIA said our information is 100% correct from the tribes. That was told to Congressman Pete Sessions. That's been told to more than one person. So
we've never found the tribes to give us any information.
We've never had bad information.
And again, I'm not doubting by referring to something as evidence rather than proof. I'm not doubting its veracity. We need to be precise. And when we throw around this term proof, it's suggestive of a conclusion. And part of the problem is that when we're dealing with deception, we're dealing with disinformation, we don't know who's giving what to who. So we have to examine each piece of evidence.
That's not right. We know where our information's coming from.
And when you talk about proof, the problem with proof and evidence,
but we don't know who might have deceived them. Guys, I'm going to flatly refuse to refer to anything as proof. It's a fundamental mistake to talk about proof. We're going to talk about evidence. We're going to examine evidence. And then whatever body is deciding what is or isn't true, in the case of this show, it's everybody in their own mind will decide what the proof is. If we were presenting this in court, we would have to meet a certain challenge to prove, beyond the shadow of a doubt or beyond a reasonable doubt or whatever it is. We're misusing the term proof if we call elements of evidence proof. I'm sorry, it's not a debate, it's a fact.
Okay.
I think I don't know if the American people
I want us to be
precise,
guys. Well, because it misleads people. When you talk about proof, you're talking about a conclusion. And the truth is, we know what we know, and then there's elements that we don't know. And when Lee presents stuff, I can't say that anything that Lee has said is false. That doesn't mean that he has the right answer. And that doesn't mean that he's provided proof that this video was the cause. He's provided evidence that is good evidence. He shows a news show from Egypt showing the video. days before this happened. So to say that it played in Egypt and people knew about it and there was I don't want to go over everything that Lee said, but he's presented evidence. Tonight we're going to present evidence. I think it's going to hurt the presentation if we start with the conclusion that it's proof.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stand on the source of the information. And, I'm not talking about any news agency that we don't trust any news agency. So the information we have received was received from sources that have always been correct, always, in everything they've ever presented to us. We're not talking about some reporter that had an earpiece in his ear that was told what to say. We also have eyewitnesses. It was across the street. These kinds of things are real hard to say, well, that's an opinion. It's not an opinion.
I didn't say it was an opinion. Listen, we've got a fundamental disagreement here because someone standing in the street looking at the building get bombed who tells you, I saw it get bombed, they're giving you eyewitness testimony. That's evidence. It is not proof. They might have seen it get bombed, but that doesn't mean they know who sent the bomb. That doesn't mean they know what was in the bomb, what the purpose of the bomb was, what motivated the bomb. It's an element of evidence. And I'm not trying to be difficult, guys, but we cannot go into any investigation saying, I trust this person, so it's proof. They're a good source of information. They're providing us with credible evidence. We're going to examine that evidence. Part of the reason I'm being such a stickler on this is because when we have people like Mike Lindell produce a thing called This is Proof, or whatever he called the thing, undeniable proof, it just destroys the argument from the outset. We just can't approach it like that. I'm happy to look at the evidence that you guys are going to present. We're going to be doing that in 15 minutes on Patreon.
I'm not going to sit in the same room with Lindell and try to say that his information is anywhere like whatever we've got. First of all, he needs to go to some diction classes and some things like that. But really and truly, Jason, the thing is, we have never had an agenda in this thing. We've always been provided information, and that's what we put out. And I'm never going to accept anything from CNN or any other news agency, some agenda-driven entity that's going to try to sell their story that was provided to them by AP, who's owned by Soros and Company. We don't get that kind of information. I'm not saying you should
do that, guys. I don't understand why we're having this misunderstanding.
I don't either.
I'm not talking about CNN, and I'm not saying that Lee Stranahan is proof. I'm just saying we cannot refer to evidence as proof. I refuse to do it. I will not do it. It's the wrong approach. Well, doesn't matter how credible the person providing it is.
We said our information, Jason, not our proof, our information.
Okay, the comments are agitating me, and we're getting off on a tangent here on this distinction that I find important that you guys don't. But what else are we going to talk about tonight?
We're also going to talk about Libya and the election of 4 people by a group of people that was appointed,
Muslim Brotherhood,
that was appointed by the UN, and most of them bribed their way in with money. They're Muslim Brotherhood, who represent less than 3% of the Libyan people. They elected 4 people who are going to set up a temporary interim government to set up an election in Libya in December of this year, December 24th, I think, 2021. Now, there were no good people put forward to run this interim government.
Who were they? They're all Muslim Brotherhood.
These are
criminals.
Well, I talked to the Libyan tribes today, and they said they're all rats. Rats work with the Muslim Brotherhood. Rats are what they consider Libyan traitors who joined Hillary Clinton against the people of Libya. And these people, the head guy is from Misrata, which is the worst place in Libya right now. Nobody trusts them. So in 3 days, they told me they'd have a formal update for me from the tribes, but nobody's really happy about this. The UN lady, what's her name, Stephanie Williams, said, we're going to be watching you. You have sworn to do this, to have an election in December. You cannot run for office. That's one of the agreements they signed. They also signed to clean the country of militias, of foreign troops. We'll see if that happens. So far,
have they ever done anything they agreed to?
So far, they've never done anything they agreed to. So we'll
so
see.
You got the fox back in the chicken coop, and they're only going to eat the chickens they're going to be allowed to eat.
Well, the problem is the Libyan people still have no voice.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. You got 90-some% of the Libyans who have no voice. These are 3% of funded by Turkey, funded by whoever, who have stolen from Libya for the past 10 years, who have ruined the country continually, never did anything to fix anything, never did anything to help the country with power or food or anything.
And here's the terrible part. These 4 guys, these asshole criminals that are now the new government, Libyans didn't have a thing to say who they are, but those guys are going to be in control of all the money produced from the oil and gas in Libya. They are the government. Everybody's supposed to recognize them, and they're supposed to guarantee there's election a year off. But in the meantime, they have an open hand to do whatever. So Libyans are not happy about this. Again, the bad guys that have been robbing Libya blind and raping that country
since 2011
are continuing to do that. And of course, U.S., UN, and NATO are right along with it. So 4 criminals are now in control of Libya with the imprimatur of all the foreign governments.
Yeah, but the House of Representatives has a say in this, in Tobruk, and they're supposed to agree. And this is why the tribe said, well, we'll have more information in 3 days. So
okay, last time we were in this position, the elected government in Libya, in Tobruk, did not agree with anything that this foreign group had installed as the government.
That was the security
They never
agreement.
agreed with anything they said to do, but they went ahead and did it anyhow. And the Tobruk government, forget it. So, I think we're same song, another verse, just 10 years down the road.
Well, I don't know. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
A lot of Libyans have stood up against this, and apparently Stephanie Williams said that she said no Libyans think that there's going to be an election now. They don't trust this at all. This is what I've been told. They don't trust the people in charge. They don't trust any of this. And she said the UN is going to make sure this happens. These people have sworn to do this.
Of course, the UN's the one that blew up Libya, aren't they?
Yeah, and the UN's the one who set up the security agreement with the General National, government, GNA, that's in there now.
Well, guys, let's do this because you've got a little bit of a rough internet connection. So I want to make sure we have enough time to restart on your end and try and get Skype reconnected. So in just under 10 minutes, we're going to begin the sponsor exclusive show. We're going to get into all the details of the evidence, and people watching can decide if this evidence proves one thing or another. We'll see that on patreon.com/James and Joanne Moriarty, or patreon.com or subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you at 8:30.
Jason?
Yes.
Just before you go, tell them that our patrons, who are patrons of ours, will get a copy of the PDF with all the proof on it, with all the evidence on it.
Exactly. All the links will be on the PDF. And each week when we do the show, people who sponsor Jimmy and Joanne on patreon.com/James and Joanne Moriarty are not only helping keep this kind of independent reporting alive, by sponsoring Jimmy and Joanne, you're going to get access to all the links from the articles that we use during the show, so you can go in depth and really explore what we're talking about. I also want to remind people to visit LibyanWarTheTruth.com. You can purchase Jimmy and Joanne's DVD, and if you sponsor them on patreon.com/James and Joanne Moriarty, the shipping is free. It's a great way to learn about Libya and the harrowing escape from Al-Qaeda that almost took Jimmy and Joanne from us. So thankfully, Jimmy had some money stuffed in his shorts that he was able to pay the terrorists. But we'll be back in just a few minutes. We'll see everybody on Patreon and Subscribestar. Thanks for tuning in.